Meeting order not to agree to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did mention that at the last.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Welcome to August, it's reading of the whole. We'll get straight to discussion and I'll turn it over to Glenn. Go ahead, Glenn. Parks and Rec, future plans.
You got it. So, we went ahead and, essentially, our Parks and Rec regular meeting isn't until tomorrow. However, it made sense for us to go ahead and have our meeting, 1 week prior, so that we could discuss the Parks and Rec committee, where we wanted to go, what some of the issues were before our meeting tonight. So the, group was there, and basically, Danielle is gonna chime in, I believe, if I make any incorrect or lack of comments.
And Emilio's running a little bit late, on his way, apologizes.
So I've got, Parks and Rec. Following the council's budget meeting and subsequent discussions about Parks and Rec, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board met and believe our programs offer significant value to the community. However, after thorough deliberation, we can determine that tackle football and cheerleading are not the most cost-effective or time-efficient options at this time. We plan to transition these programs to a parent volunteer group or another organization for the fall of 2020. So that was the tackle football and the cheerleading. And through a lot of discussion, determined that we're not getting our, for lack of better words, paying for our buck.
Did that include flag?
No, it does not include flag. It was something to tackle at this point, as well as the cheerleading. The flag is something new for the 5th and 6th graders this year, and seems that things are taking off in that route, in a positive direction. Do you agree with that so far, Danielle? Yes. The board also reviewed our sponsorship activities for 2025. Obviously recognizing things didn't go as we had planned for 2024. We intend to start our discussions about sponsorships for 2025 during our September, October meetings, and we plan to follow the DDA's sponsorship model with naming rights for specific programs. Example, one of the items that program I should say that we intend to take on is the movies. Instead of on Lane Street, would be movies in the park and movies at the pool. And I don't want to say anything specific because I don't know exactly how locked in it is, but I believe that we have a sponsor for $1,000 for that particular program, which is something we had not had in the year previous. So that is what we plan to take a look towards as we continue. We do have sponsorships, have had sponsorships for the 3-on-3, and Emilio has plans to continue with that, as well as sponsorships for the Blissfield on Tap. So we do recognize with some of our other events, for example, light up the park and things of that nature. We're going to look for some specific sponsors for those particular programs, and that's kind of the route that we take a look at. The last item that we discussed was using a new program called Sports Connect to help streamline our registration process. That's something that Emilio has looked into, and he is here and he can address that. If you guys have questions for that, but that is something that he feels will be greatly beneficial for the registration process. Also giving thought to eliminating the paper registrations and going totally online for spring soccer and another program, just to see if that would be help with our efficiency. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we're making that suggestion to go ahead and to try that again without paper pencil registration. Danielle?
Right, I think you covered everything. She went over all the stuff you were gonna talk about. Do you wanna add anything, or I know?
No, that's the only stuff I've seen here, me. I was late, so I apologize. Did you went over tackle, I'm assuming?
I did. The
Yeah.
tackle and the cheerleading, correct.
Back to the sports connect, just to hit on it, in case you guys have any questions, really like. We talk about spinning our wheels and the office staff doing a lot of work, really what that eliminates is It's not so much that the village staff has to take the registrations, right? That's part of the role and that's what they're normal to doing. What happens is if there's questions reflected on that, or if I have, let's just say 12 parents that come in registering the parent for that day, they ask me a specific question. I do have a full-time job on top of this. So if I don't have the time to communicate to the office, Danielle, Maddie right away, it eliminates that process of that communication where someone comes in, hey, I spoke to Emilio, or Maddie, Lisa, whoever, has not heard from me. Eliminates that time that the office staff is doing, but also back to the spring, like Maddie was doing something for us in the spring season where she would put in all the paper registrations to a Google Doc where I'm able to see all that just because I was not in the office. But Sports Connect completely eliminates that. It does it all for me. I mean, they don't necessarily.
Is there a cost on that?
There is not a cost to Sports Connect, no. We were able to start free. There typically is. So it just eliminates that process. And then
What's the typical cost?
$500, was it? 3 to 5 for the year?
Yeah, I believe it was 500 for the
Yeah.
year.
But no, there's no cost for that.
Okay.
But we're still keeping easy facilities for our other stuff, but Sports Connect especially for our programs. So I know Gwen, you kind of hit on that. I don't want to keep saying what you
No, no,
said.
no, you were fine.
And then for tackle, when we talk about like spinning our wheels, I've talked to people outside of Blissfield with tackle football. Where with sponsors, fundraising from the parents, they can get over $5,000 and they're still negative every year. So you talk about a program where we're spinning our wheels, if we do have Rotary sponsor, we do have sponsors, we do have fundraising from the parents. That's kind of where we keep spinning our wheels, like there are options to raise money to hopefully offset that cost. But what we keep running into is if, oh, we'll see what it turns out to next year, we're negative again for one program. Where the time that I put into that program and the time and money that we're getting doesn't really benefit our program. When I'm sure there's someone out there that has a passion for it, hopefully in our community that could take it over. But that's where we mean when we're just spinning our wheels is we keep trying new things to raise money and we still find ourselves in the negative. You know, how long do you want to keep doing that and just keep it in that negative each year for that? So kind of going over what Gwen said.
Did
Sorry.
anybody reach out to Coach Love?
Not that I know of. I've had generic conversations with them. And I don't think that's something the school would take on. I'm just assuming I would have to talk to Eric Schmidt, Scott Riley, Coach Love too, but I would be surprised.
And it is proceeding this year
Yes.
within 2024. This is for the 2025 year. So we would have some time to have some conversations and hopefully be able to pass that baton to somebody that can take it over and help get them kind of transition moving forward. We're not saying tomorrow we're done.
Yeah, we are still finishing this year. And we still have all that equipment too that we still have to take into consideration.
So flag football will run from one ages to one ages.
All the way through 6th grade, 1st through 6th. That started this year.
So flag will run 1 through 6.
Yep.
And then in 7, they can play this week.
Correct. Yeah. Some communities do have tackles started as early 3rd grade. That there are kids from Blissfield that are.
Yeah, there was a county effort last year. Started tackle football.
Yeah.
It says, is that correct? Or is
It's been 5th, 6th tackle for a while. I think it's been kind of growing at a county level because they added 3rd, 4th.
Yeah.
Last year, I believe it was.
So I do believe that the Parks and Rec Advisory Board took the comments very seriously, and I thought that, and I think Emilio, you would agree with that as well, that it was a very productive discussion, and I think that moving forward, we're going to be more efficient, a little more, again, bang for the buck with our programs and look at them not that we don't look at them already seriously, but even in a different way of that.
Were there any other programs you thought to eliminate or add?
Not, well, nothing to eliminate at this time. Would you agree with that?
We consider cheerleading.
Yeah, we did say cheerleading as well.
Yeah, that's something I think we might have voted on it, actually, I don't
We
know.
did go to.
It's definitely something I think we should consider. If we're talking about eliminating program in general, I think we start with tackle for sure.
Yeah.
I think cheerleading can be offset by if we find one good sponsor, I think that could be. Our numbers just for cheerleading are very low, right? If you look at a lot of programs, you have at least 60 registrations for cheerleading, all the way from first to fifth, you have probably 30 or less. This year, I believe we're only at 20.
They do offer cheerleading at E3 during the basketball season,
They do, yeah.
so it's not like there's a.
And then cheer starts in sixth grade, middle school. So we cut off cheer in fifth grade.
And the board did vote on removing
Yeah.
that, and the discussion, I think, too, was that it's a minimal, we're only touching a few, participants, where our other programs, and we're spending the same amount of time that we are on spring soccer, we have 100 registrations, or 80 for flag, or. So it just seems like better time spent low-key on the other programs where we're able to have a larger impact with our participants.
I would say this, that one of the programs that we would be implementing that would be new would be the movies in the park. However, Emily has taken that lead on that, and that's something that Emilio, you had addressed even at last Tuesday's meeting of how Emilio has recognized that as he's overseeing some of these programs / events. He doesn't have to be the person that's in charge and doing all of it. He feels comfortable with Emily leading the program for the movies on Lane, or movies in the park. And then he will go ahead and obviously still have his finger on it, but he doesn't need to be right on it, because he's, again, kind of following that DDA format, Lori, how here's Laura right here, and then here are the events, and she's got her people in charge of that event or that program. And delegation, that's kind of what Emilio spoke about last week as well.
Yeah, moving in the park, sign language as well for Brandon. You have the fishing event that you have this year, the triathlon Brian does. Listed on tab, actually, James, you know that Danielle and your committee takes on that. So there's a lot of things, like we have our programs as a whole throughout the year. We also have events that are falling in my scope, but I do like rely on my board heavily for things that they have a love for and they want to implement, because I can't be at every place at once. And I think the board and Danielle and everyone recognizes that as well.
Council, any questions for Emilio or what?
You have other Parks and Rec board members as well. Kelsey, Emily, and Jake are all here that are served on board. Just in case any of you have questions for them or vice versa.
Go ahead, Emily.
So I do just want to recognize that Emilio has been in this position for 10 months, okay? So like, he's just now getting through all of these events for the first time. And I think he's done a great job. I think he's brought a lot of good ideas to the position, efficiencies. There was a gap, remember, where this position was unfilled, and a lot of the work was being done by Danielle and the office staff. So hopefully going forward, hasn't been like the same amount of work for the office staff. As far as planning for what we want to do in the future, we're working on our 5-year Parks and Rec plan. And part of that is we have a survey out right now asking the public to let us know, what would you like to see in our parks? What's missing? What do you like?
No, I fully support having a Parks and Rec paid part-time individual like Emilio. I don't think this could fall back on our office, nor do I think it could fall back on volunteers. I just wonder if tackle football, there was a big push last year to get it going and to see it get cut so quickly. I'm just wondering, didn't we spend like $6,500 on helmets and pads?
So the Rotary donated $3,200. The parents volunteer, they are not volunteered, but they did volunteer, and did a fundraiser, which brought in $2,600, and the village, general fund contributed $3,000 to get helmets. Which the helmets, we got helmets, pants, and then the jerseys is part of the registration, and they have those. So the helmets are all brand new. They do recommend or required to be recertified every 3 years minimum. It's recommended every year. But that's where it's every year we have those high top for that program.
I mean, I agree, there's a want for it, right? There's people that, I mean, we have overwhelming amount of interest. But just from last year, between those numbers, that's $8,600 and we were still in the hole for that program, correct?
And
Yeah.
we actually spent just over 12,000 last year total.
Yeah.
So we don't have to buy all new helmets, which the helmets alone were $6,100, but we do have to recertify. Any that fail can't be, then we have to replace. And I would say that's probably the biggest cost. We replaced no shoulder pads, which are not, there's getting to the point where we need to start replacing those. And that's a challenging program too, because we don't know the size of the kids that are coming in. So last year, we ended up having to purchase a lot of cheek pads to make them fit. We have a set amount of girdles. We had to buy some different ones because we had not enough of one size and too many of the other, which just increases that cost each year as well.
I think to give an example, right, if you look at programs we have just in the fall, we know we have to buy equipment on top of jerseys and all this stuff, pay for referees. We're pretty confident, I think I am at least, that program at least breaks even outside of tackle football. But if you look at tackle football, I mean, we did the numbers shortly before the season even started of how much money we'd have to fundraise, and that's if there was no other expense that we were sure that something was gonna come up. So like, if you think at programs as just a whole, outside of tackle football, it's dang near, unless something goes south, that it's gonna break even, if not make some money. Tackle football, you can almost guarantee that's gonna be negative, even if we fundraise almost, well, we donated 3,000, so almost 6,000 out of our own pockets. So that's where it gets tricky, like where we spin our wheels. It's like, I can sit back, know, we're opening up registrations. If people register, we're gonna make money, but tackle is just a constant headache and time put into it. Where every single year, it's just not gonna be there.
And we're limited to
Right.
one, I mean, this year's 24 participants.
Well, if you can notify Coach Love, at least let them know future plans to let go of tackle football. 5-6. grade level.
So you only have 24 registered now for tackle,
25,
25.
but we really can't go above that much, really.
I just wanna like, equipment wise, what do we do with the equipment? Like, if we say, okay, there's no more tech, we've invested $12,000 or whatever over the last couple years, what happens to the equipment? If somebody decides they wanna take over this program, and like, say I as a community member, I'm like, hey, I really love tech. You know, I've got a boy who's 5, and a boy who's 8, they're gonna be getting ready to go through that. If it was something I wanted to do, like, it's, how does that work? They basically, that community member just would have to. They would have to fundraise the difference from registration and all that and get that money together, cause like. So I was relatively quiet during the discussion, cause I'm a little bit, I'm more on the side of keeping tackle at the end of the day. I didn't really vote, I just kind of was quiet, but I understand Emilio's point. So from my point of view, I wasn't gonna be very vocal because I don't have the time and energy in my life right now to donate to tackle football to run. So if Emilio says he can't, I get it, that's cool. My question then becomes though, if we do it and someone does take over, my concern would be that if there is a shortcoming, but we have a lot of interest, then the village will not be there as an entity to provide gap funding for that, which, I mean, I understand that it costs money, but also my point of view, Parks and Recreation should have some component of public service involved as well, right? Like, I don't think every program has to make money for it to make sense. It's the old adage of like, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. I don't think that's the case here. I think that obviously you're dealing with a smaller program, but if we did that, would it be on the private individual end to raise those funds, and how do we transfer? And this might be a question that we deal with going forward, and it doesn't have to be answered tonight, but how do we take that equipment and get it into their hands once we've invested that much time and money in that equipment? We just hand it over to somebody and say, hey, here you go, like, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, if we, Jake, if we are dumping a program and or I'm not. If we are eliminating the program, then I don't think there's any funds to be reclaimed from used helmets and shoulder pads, so. I think as a council will probably vote to generously donate it. Just keep in mind that every 3 years, max, they have to be recertified, and helmets do have a lifespan, so you're at some point having to replace all that equipment. That's why I brought up Coach Love. If you want a winning program at the varsity level, you're gonna want a feeder program starting in 5th, 6th grade, so I would think the school, or maybe under his leadership, could take over that program. And, these are all purple helmets, so they're pretty much Blissfield colors, it'd be tough to offload them elsewhere, so I think we'd probably donate them to the next leader. Yeah, from what I know tackle football is a big push, it always has, even when I played, a big fundraising effort, big push to get new equipment, so nothing's changed in that respect. I think what we really need is some sort of organization or new leadership to take over this is what Parks and Rec is saying tonight, right? You need either an organization or new leadership to take over.
I would concur with that.
Yeah, and sounds like we want to allocate those funds.
I think Jake makes certainly a very valid point, is I was thinking the same thing, didn't verbalize it last week either, but I did think, well, I wonder if this were to happen, what does happen to that equipment? And that is obviously something that has to come to that discussion, and if that other people go in.
It's already a sunk cost for us, we've already paid for it, we've already expensed it, so.
And I think our recommendation would be to donate that to whoever takes it over and help with that transition, at least help get them going, so they're not going out buying 30 new helmets that we have sitting there and.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a head start. I mean, we do have quite a few equipment. Like most of it's still good. Like you said, we just paid for it. I think also, like to James's point, like we have to talk to Coach Love in school, whoever's gonna take over. And I think once we find the individual entity, whoever wants to take over the program, if they want to take over it, how they fundraise and get the proceeds from after that, that's kind of their responsibility, right? Our goal would just be to give them something to donate at the start, which will be out.
How high up is the pickleball? How high up is pickleball priority list?
Pretty much.
Maybe Kelsey's way up.
Similar to 3-on-3.
All right. All right, any other questions, comments from the council from public? No? Appreciate the update, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Mia.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Jake. Thank you. Employee wages.
I did email council right before the meeting and I apologize for the lateness of it. I had. One of the. Gwen reached out, was asking for a history of the wages, which I had actually prepared last year. So I did send that, and then there's a second tab that I added, just showing the change in benefit prices, just a percentage base. Prior to tonight, I had sent you guys a breakdown of the wages, showing the difference between, you at the last meeting, you had requested the difference from 3.5 to 4 to the 5%. And I sent you those totals, and it was broke down by department within the difference. I should have put, when I said this to you guys, I should have clarified that difference, that is wages and benefits fully included, which health benefits isn't going to change based on wage, but pension does, because pension is a percentage of wage. So that difference is fully inclusive of all of those benefits. But if you guys have questions for me, I put in the budget, I had recommended a cost of living of 5%. That's what's built into the budget. Otherwise, it's open to discussion for you guys or any questions you have of myself.
Do we have an average percent increase for these years, Danielle?
It's probably 3%. Most every year was I think 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, 5. 6 years were 3%, a couple were 2, so I'm gonna say if we averaged it out, it's probably 3. I mean, 2 years were 2 and 1 year was 1%.
Danielle, can you help me a little bit with page 2 of our packet you have? Says at the top, it's fiscal year 23-24 employee wage scale. Effective October 1 of 2020.
That is the proposed wage scale
So
at the 5%.
where it says at the extreme far right, the post probation wage, that is with the 5% adder.
Correct.
I did a quick math and it seems like it's 3% maybe. Yes, I did my math.
Is there not one for each 3?
No, in the one I have, it just has my position. And then the next column going to the right is starting wage, and then the final column says post probation wage. Probably should say something different than post probation wage.
Gotta look what- Let's see, I'm showing 5%, so like administrator, it's 89,449.50,
Right,
that's 5% from what it is this year. So are you doing starting wage to post probation is 3%, because that's the difference between the two. But from this year, 89,449.50 is a 5% increase from 85,190, which is the current wage.
right, that's where I was confused at.
Yes, sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking, but it is a 5% that was proposed, so that would be the new wages.
So Danielle, just to reiterate, so we're. The starting wage to 86,766, that's now the post probation. 89,449.50, that's with 5%.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So I am post probation, and if we look at my position specifically, I am post probation, so I would make 89,449.50, which is an increase from my current wage of 85,190. Now, if I were to leave the village of Blissfield for any reason and you hired a new administrator, they would be starting wage of 86,766.02. And until they completed their probationary period and then just move up.
Well, that's, we offer a lot.
Correct.
I like starting
You-
wage for that position, because that's a negotiated wage.
And I'm using that as an example, Mike, so yes, but let's look at it, same with clerk. She's post probationary, so she would be at the 6109 and 425. If you hired it without making adjustments, you said they would start at that wage. So then if somebody new came in, they would start less than what the current employee makes.
So where does the 5% originate?
So I did 5% because I look at inflation every year. This year it is projected to be a little bit lower, but there's been years in the past where it's been higher. So I went a little bit higher this year because I felt like budget wise, we could afford it, so that on those years where we can't afford or keep up with inflation, we're not falling further and further behind.
We just did an adjustment last year after the wage scale started.
Correct.
So does this keep up with that study, or is this put you ahead?
It would put us slightly ahead of it. And that, I say it's slightly ahead, but because I'm basing that on like they're projecting the inflation to be 3.2, but you guys know just as much as the rest of us, like if I go to the grocery store, I'm spending 50 to 100% more than 3.2, like, so they're saying inflation for this year is that. So that's why, again, I put it slightly ahead to try to keep up with that, so that if next year, let's say inflation is 5%, but we can only afford to give 3%, it ends up balancing out because we were a little bit ahead this year. And that kind of makes up for it, was my thought. Like the one year we only.
Stopped at it, but after asking Danielle to run the numbers, showing that that's something that we can afford this year, obviously, you know, we try to pro employee, probably just growing up. My father being in the position he was, but we want to take care of our staff, we want to retain our staff, because that's obviously better in the long run for the village, and retraining and rehiring and shifting positions. I think if we can afford it, you know, we kind of nitpick through our wants versus our needs on this budget, I think we can afford to do it this year. I think it could stay pace with, you know, like it or hate it, last year's wage changes. Trying to catch up to the quote system and, you know, to be competitive. I think five across the board. As much as, you know, the public may not like it again, I think it's something that we can afford this year. It's something that to show, you know, our staff who we appreciate, want to keep around, that we're trying to give them the, you know, the best benefit that we can. The only thing I would say is we're gonna do 5%, we're gonna do 5% across the board. I'm not willing to, and Lori, you're here, but this is the first one, I'm not willing to give a 33% wage increase to the Main Street manager. This is something I've chewed on for a couple of years now. And then after last year's major increase of, I think it was 7%, that's almost 40% over 2 years. That's unacceptable. Not realistic. Sitting on the DDA board and as a council head, I don't think we can afford that.
You cannot just pick out one employee and say, everybody but you gets a raise.
I would give 5%.
But if I understand correctly, the DDA board has already taken that vote. And that vote was determined that, and their budget was based upon that vote.
I'm not sure that wage was discussed to their knowledge.
It was, and that wage is an outlier, so it was discussed at the DDA level because we specifically talked about the option. So Laura is currently a salaried employee. She's an exempt, so if she works overtime, she does not get paid overtime. There is a new labor law that sets the minimum requirement for exempt employees. So in order for Laura's position to remain exempt, that would be the minimum salary that is required. So our options are to increase Laura's salary to the minimum required, keep her as an exempt employee, or it would be to pay her overtime. She would get an hourly rate, anything over 40 would be overtime. We also have the ability to say you don't work overtime, you work 40 hours. If that's the route that you go, then her job, her responsibilities and duties would need to be either cut or assigned to somebody else. And that's what they had talked about. So I had recommended to the DDA board that if you want to have her do the same job and same responsibility she does now, it is more cost effective for us to increase that salary to the required labor law minimum than it is to pay out overtime. Because if you look at her history and the average of overtime, it would cost us more money to pay that overtime.
444 hours from today's wage to your proposed wage would cover that overtime. That would be 444 hours over the course of a year at no increase.
And Laura works 70 hours a week.
I don't think that we can afford that. I don't think that's right. Again, we cannot afford with a $58,656 director and a 48, 49, 50% fringe benefits.
The draft
That's
budget,
$100,000
the
event.
draft budget already includes the funding for Laura's salary. It's determined
Exactly.
by the DDA board. Hang on, let me finish. By the DDA board.
And also
That
$25,000.
approach, that
from-
approach ensures that her position remains cost effective. Just as Danielle stated, and it does not result in a reduction of services. If there's any change to her position, there will be a reduction in services. Importantly, and this is why I think the picture is too light, we are adhering to the DDA board decisions.
Yeah, they're not, they don't make the decision.
They do,
They
they
make a
don't,
recommendation.
they,
make a
their
recommendation.
recommendations are.
And we're also shuffling from the general fund, we're shuffling for economic.
Their, the
development,
DDA
$25,000.
board's decisions, recommendations, it's, you're talking semantics there with the wording. And I don't want to circumvent their authority. I won't do that.
That's our job. That is our job. They are they are.
It is our
advisory.
job to review it. I would totally agree with that, but I'm not gonna go ahead and go back to them and say, hey, I don't like it, and you volunteer people, not gonna listen to you.
When have you
And
got a 40% increase over?
I never have, however, Mike, some of this is out of our hands, meaning this is a state law. We don't have that choice.
We do.
Is that correct, Danielle?
We absolutely have the choice.
If you wanna continue things like that, we do not have that choice.
I'm not seeing anything. I sit on that board.
Then
and
why are you on the DDA board if you are so animosity towards it? Why are you on?
Because I want to see things happen. We have had television. What businesses have we brought in over the past 5 years?
I'm not going to go into, I was.
I want to know, what is the purpose of the DDA?
Well,
What is the purpose
I
of
haven't
the
been on DDA for 5 years, but I'll tell you the last couple of years, the DDA has not been instructing to try to attract businesses as a priority. It's to try to generate businesses or try to generate business and sales for the businesses located in the DDA. And it's been event focused, and that's a carryover from Heather Marks. So going back all the way prior to Director Nichols, like, it's always been event based because that sort of drives instant business to these. The
But it's
businesses.
not working.
But that
Look
was,
at our
but
downtown.
that
Well,
was,
it's
that's
not
awesome. The
working.
DDA's
I'll tell you this,
focus.
years ago, I went to, an economic forum in Tecumseh where they had ready to go pads poured with infrastructure, driveways, plumbing, electric installed. So you just had, all you do is put the shell. We're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near that. And economic development is, you can't even quantify that. Right? Like that's just, you go to these conferences, they talk about economic development. Really though, what is any DDA director? How are they driving economic development?
The way it's explained to me is they provide an atmosphere that people want to move their families into town, they want to come and sit on the parklet and have a beer, they want to provide, we want to provide an atmosphere with either our events or our, and to your point, Mike, you know, we have brought in, we had, last year we had 10 new businesses, this year we have 5 new businesses. So we are,
In the DDA district, who brought those in? Who brought those businesses in?
it doesn't matter if
It
you,
doesn't
if you
matter.
look at.
Chris brought the majority of the business person, right?
And it's developing relationships with people like Rex Chris.
And you think she doesn't have a relationship with Rex Chris? Are you kidding me? Talk to Rex Chris and he'll tell you right now.
I'm
She's
saying,
part of the reason that he is working with as much as he's working with here within our village. That's a no-brainer. The other thing is this, Mike, with you being on the board, and I don't mean criticism with this, I'm just stating a fact. You were the board is the one that said to Laura, we want you to do first Thursdays. We want you to do all those
we got
events.
rid of those.
But listen to my point. My point is this. She followed the directive of the board, which is exactly who she's supposed to follow the directive of. Which involved obviously many more events. Obviously that, you know, things have been tweaked and it's been changed. At the same time, you guys have recognized that. So you can't take that away from her. She followed into the directive exactly what she was supposed to do. And you were on that board.
And I made my
You
point
had-
very clear.
You had plenty of opportunities to make your point very
I did.
clear.
I did.
Well, then
absolutely.
you must be the lone man because,
Yes.
well, then I don't know what to tell you there, but.
All I'm saying is, where's the bang for the buck? When people see $110,000 of our tip capture go to that position, Where are we, where's our tax money? Where's our tip increase? What do we have to show for it? What do we have to show for it downtown?
Well, if you don't
Do you have
have a
40
DDA director,
do you
you
have
don't have
40%
any
increase? Do you have an increase in business? Do you have an increase in foot traffic? Do you have an increase in new business? Do you have an increase
Do
in?
you want to
Upstairs
keep
living?
DDA Main Street?
No, I want to change the focus of the. And I'm telling you, it's not up to the village it's not up to the DDA to supplement these businesses. It's not up to the DDA to make these businesses flourish. It's to help them, it's to help guide them and give them assistance, not to support them and make them flourish. That's up to the business owner.
But with the assistance of the DDA Main Street
Yeah.
program. Mike, you went to enough of those Main Street programs, I know you have.
Yes, I am. And that is my point. That is what I'm trying to imply, that we have had tunnel vision for the past, how long that we've been kicking our heels against the walls, trying to get business owners, trying to get the public to say, what do you want downtown? What can we do to make downtown more vibrant? What kind of businesses do we need? Things like that. Again, these happy events where people just come and go. It's great, but that should be volunteer based. It should be sponsor based. It shouldn't take up a majority of her time. It's much like we're talking about football. If the volunteers don't step up to do it, then it doesn't happen. And you know how that works.
I do know how that works, and
Either way, you still have to employ a DDA director. Either way,
We don't,
You
we can, but we don't have
you
to. That's what I'm
either
saying.
have, you don't have to, like,
well, that's the
let's,
thing.
let's say
We
we
don't need to do that.
continue and economic
I
development.
just,
is
I
the-
feel like. You had heartburn over giving Heather like 3,000 or 4,000 just a few years ago. And now
Yes, I
you want to give a 40% increase over 2 years.
I see the value in the product that Laura delivered.
I don't see,
I
I
intend to-
don't see it in the.
I
budget,
intend-
unfortunately. That's not more, it's the program. And I think a lot of,
These
The
are the
residents-
same programs that are being offered across the country in small.
but where is the business? Where is the business recruitment? Where's the business expansion? Where are new businesses? Where is a
Well, we just,
retail
yeah, 15
downtown?
over the last
Where's
2
a
years.
retail downtown? How much of our downtown is service based now?
But how, why is that DDA's fault? Why is that the
Because that
DDA
is the
director's fault?
DDA's job to bring that stuff in.
But she can't possibly control when somebody buys a building and
So-
brings their business in.
So if I'm a
She can't-
doctor and I take somebody's house up and I can't do it, do I still get paid?
I'm just saying, if she can't control someone for bringing in a business as a service business, if they purchase the building.
Okay, how many service businesses did you recruit, Laura?
I don't know exactly where you're going with this, Mike. I meet with people all the time. I have a meeting next week, or excuse me, on Wednesday for Blissfield Manufacturing.
Tell me how you deserve that 40% of an increase in pay over 2 years.
I did not ask for, Mike, I did not ask for an increase in anything.
I don't think that's fair.
This is not, this is not
Because I
driven by
think-
me
I think the residents
demanding
need to ask
money.
that. I think the residents need to ask that.
This boils back to what comes up with the state law and us having to
That's right.
either move her to the higher rate to avoid her being a non-exempt employee. So
That's the state law.
staying away from the overtime, or if you cut her back and only gave a 5% increase based on the 43,000. Then you would have to pay her overtime or then deny her overtime, and then services and everything else are gonna go by the wayside. Who's gonna pick up that slack?
The volunteers and the business owners, and that's what needs to happen. That's who needs to pick up the slack. It's
They're-
not a freebie, it's not a handout.
They're not going to.
Then I'm sorry, then they're not gonna get their bang for the buck, are they? Because it doesn't fall back on the village
But then
and
you're
the
talking about-
taxpayers in her to guide these businesses to.
I understand where you're coming from, Mike, but then you're not supporting those businesses by giving them the resources that may be available to them through the DDA director. Now you force them,
Ask them what resources they need though. Ask
As
them what
well as the Main
resources they're
Street programs,
utilizing.
because if we do not have a full-time director, we will no longer be a part of Main Street.
That's not true. That was a lie. You can, I just read it this year on our evaluation. Anybody under, I think, 4,500 people can have a part-time
That's not true.
director. That was on
I
our assessment.
clarified it with Laura and Lee.
Then why is that on our assessment?
It was on there last year and we clarified it last year, because this is a perennial thing with you.
I'm not sure if we're getting the bang for the buck with the Main Street program. That's my question. How many times has Main Street come and visited us here and gave us presentations or given us any sort of discussion?
I'm not on board, I don't know.
We have.
We get a lot of that bang for our buck.
I thought, Laura, you are a full-time employee,
I am,
work 40 hours.
More than 40.
I work.
What services would be cut if you only work 40 hours?
I don't really know. I haven't really, to answer that, I don't know.
That would need to be a discussion with her board too, because she reports to her board. So when to clarify that question, Tim, I'm saying services have to be cut if you limit her to 40, because she cannot she's already taking 65, 70 hours a week to do a job. And if you reduce her to 40, there's just not enough time. So that's where I'm saying, we've not taken a hard look at what those services would be. The DDA would have to prioritize, but she cannot be expected, should not be expected to do 70 hours of work in 40 hours. No person can do that. Something would have to give. So that's where I'm making that statement. It's not like we've specifically looked at what services would be cut.
But we would then also have to go back to the DDA board, I mean, essentially this, okay? So we as council, go to you, DDA board, and say, we don't agree with this, now you have this, fix it.
So when we're saying services, are we saying events that we're planning? That's what I'm looking for clarification. Yes.
I don't.
I would have,
You have to see
So
what
it's
the,
events.
it would
Those
be
are
what the
services.
board would decide.
Service events are a service, yes, but there's more that Laura does than
The
just.
majority of the events are paid for by sponsors.
as well as.
I raise money for the events.
Yeah.
Is what Mike is saying.
And your sponsorship to some of that questions you were regarding earlier with the person previously who I was concerned with their wages. I don't think we're talking apples with apples. And we're not meaning this, we've got one person, another person. In my opinion, I think Laura has surpassed.
The friends and family probably might be talking about for years.
Okay.
But that's okay. Well, we can move
Do
on.
you know how much you raised?
It's a click, it's a click.
Last year I raised 45.
There's a.
Hold on.
Last year I
there's a way
raised
that
45.
people are seeking.
So
seeking to get raises.
last year, so just to clarify this for you, Tim, last year you raised $45,000.
Yeah, and we
After
raised,
white rails.
extra, so we were able to put the stage.
If you're else asking.
You know what?
Yes, go.
I want
Yes,
to,
you're saying.
I'm gonna stop. Whatever conversation you're trying to have here with me, could you please ask your question again? I can hear Laura's response.
I asked how much money Laura raised last year. And the answer was 45.
2,500, and with that extra money that we had not, like, it was over the budgeted amount. The board instructed me, we were able to do music in the park, we were able to put a stage in the park with that extra. And then we were also able to take 2,500 and buy banners for everybody for the bicentennial. So that is what my board instructed me to do with that extra money that I raised,
Right, but just a total for
45 last year.
$45,000 raised. So that goes to cover much of the expenses.
All of them.
All the events.
All of the events,
So just know that cutting her hours, cuts events, cuts fundraising, essentially eliminates events. Right, so it would just become,
honestly, I hate to even speculate, I don't know
Right,
what my board will
you
direct.
don't have to speculate, it's obvious what would happen.
Mhm.
And then, and if you want to focus your time on economic development, like, where's the scorecard? How do you quantify that? What, go to the board, the DDA board and ask, what does that look like? What does that mean?
So
Or no,
much-
because the general fund is covering the economic development portion, not the DDA.
That's
So
correct.
ask ourselves.
That is correct.
Ask ourselves, where's our economic development? For
So a lot of
25,000,
what I
25,000
do-
For LEDC, what are we getting out of it?
A lot of what I do is visit with people. I talk for a living. I'm in their office. I'm sitting with Larry Lidsky for an hour and a half talking about the election. I'm building relationships. And that is what economic development to me is. It's Rex Chris wanting to expand beyond Springbrook because now he sees the value. He sees people who are in their corner. It's Aaron from AccuSpray wanting to stay in Blissfield. It's the things that are kind of hard to quantify, Mike, and I will never, I don't even, I'm speaking to you, but I will never convince you, so I'm kind of done. But I'll try to convince you that is what economic development is. It's not going around, although I do, every time I shop in another town, I ask them, would you like to come to Blissfield? All the time. It is a very, very difficult environment for retail right now. I would just like a show of the hands. How many of you shop online?
Everyone but Tim.
It is difficult. Malls are closing, retail is shrinking. We have to reinvent ourselves in different ways. It's not the same model that you're asking for. Yes, it broke my heart when some of these businesses got taken over by services.
But the market.
But I will
dictates it.
tell you, those services are supporting this town.
Yeah.
And they are doing a fabulous job.
But
And we
but they
don't
need the
wanna,
events.
but we
They
don't wanna
need $100,000 worth of events. to have.
pardon me,
They don't need the events. The events are a luxury.
They
The
love
events are
those
great
events.
Community bonding. But it needs to be paid for by sponsorship and it needs to be ran by volunteers.
so Mike, when I tell you, I go out on that street every day and 10 people every single event come up to me and tell us what a good job everybody's doing. Literally, you are the only complaint I ever get. It is by far, the people in this town love what's happening. And I'm not patting myself
But
on
they
the
don't know
back.
what
We
the
have a
cost is.
great, we have a great team. We have great volunteers. Emily ran movies on Lane like a trooper, but she needs my support. I can't just like throw her to the wolves and say, go have fun. You know, I have to support her.
You have to have that point person. Emilio is our point person. Laura is the point person. And you're saying, you're saying, it's not the point person that you necessarily agree with, it's the cost.
Right.
But the cost is dictated by the state right now. So when you ask, do I agree with that necessarily, that the state intervene with all this? No, I don't. However, if I have to choose between the cost of that and losing her, I'm gonna choose her over losing her. That's how I look at it.
I'm not saying we lose her. I'm saying we pay the rate that we can, which would be straight time or anything above. And we pay overtime.
Well, losing her as well as her services.
I can't justify 40% of dues, I'm sorry.
Laura, would we lose you if we said 40 hours is all your work?
I really, I wouldn't say at this point, but it would be very, very difficult. I have never complained about the hours I work, never once. I love this job, but it cannot be done in 40 hours. It cannot. There's no way.
I'm thinking he probably like, we have to be home tomorrow, right?
Well, the thing is, we had planned our vacation short. In order for her to be here for movies on Lane Street, and there was nobody to run point for music in the park. So she did that on Friday on her own, which is technically her day off. So just as I, as a pastor, am involved in ministry, yes, I work one day a week on Sunday. But it's everything else that I'm doing that's behind the scenes that people don't see. It's the extra time reading, studying, meeting with people, same thing with Laura. That's what she's doing. She's doing things behind the scenes that cannot always be put down on paper. It would be like saying, if your dad were still here, should he be paid according to the number of murders that do not happen? Or is it just based on the number of crimes that do happen? And how do we measure what doesn't happen based on what we could have? Your dad and I had a hilarious relationship. He had one with my dad. It's that kind of thing that takes place in a small town so that people know everybody. People can have an opportunity to work together, live together, play together. And someone's got to do it. Just like someone's got to be the chief of police. Someone's got to cover the shift if the other officers aren't there. Someone's got to cover the ministry events if nobody else can make it because they're on vacation. They have their emergencies that they have to deal with. Same thing here with all the various events that take place and working with the businesses. She did come home and say to me that after the bicentennial, my viewpoint is that our downtown was very weak in attendance with all of the bicentennial stuff. I mentioned that to her. I said, honey, that's my eyes on the street perspective. She said all of the businesses that were open made money that weekend.
Said
And it didn't.
Four Keys did the best they've ever done all year.
And the thing is, it didn't look like it to me, because I didn't see hardly any traffic in Forky's, and I was sitting around just watching. So there's things that are taking place that it's hard to quantify. So because again of my job, I understand the predicament that council is in. How do you quantify what you cannot see? That is necessary for what you can see. That's the hard part. That's the hard part of your job. So. And I think we just need to be careful of making statements that it's clicky.
And I have no heartburn stating that one bit, because that's the mentality.
That could be,
majority of our staff.
and I understand that perception can be reality, but you also have to be willing to alter the perception for the true reality. And you can't always do that. That's just how it's gonna be. You just gotta deal with it, dealing with law, dealing with the rules the state mandates to us. Sometimes we're just stuck in a pickle.
Exactly, much like the state demanding a much more with our water rates. And people
That's right.
Don't understand that.
You're absolutely
But we
right.
have a choice in this, and again. This is a luxury, and this is the type of thing that people want us to take a step back. Heck, I wish we had enough money to do all this kind of stuff, because there are 100 things that I would love to do that I was.
How many people are complaining to you about it? You've made that statement a couple of times that the public doesn't want this, or the public is speaking against this, or the people aren't going to like this.
Yes. From who I talk to,
Like,
yes.
can you give numbers, a percent?
No.
Not that of the people that you talk to, but the percent of the people within the village.
I have no idea.
I personally feel better about the events if we had a business in the old BMC building in Saks Myers and Grassbergs, where they're employing 100 people, 25 people.
Well,
Well, that's economic development.
Is that
That's
economic
economic
development, or do I
development,
need to go
and
back to school and learn what it is?
I'm showing, did you say I should go back to school?
No, I said, do I need to go back to school and learn what economic development is?
Well, I don't know what your school
BMC
is.
sold that building.
I am showing that building Wednesday.
Which building was that, Laura?
Blissfield Manufacturing. But economic development has shifted drastically. You know, I do a lot of training, I do a lot of online training, I do training in person. It is almost all geared towards the shifting of what we as Main Street managers have to deal with. Nobody has anybody knocking their doors down for retail, nobody. And Lansing is a perfect example. Lansing is a huge city, and they're reimagining what it means. They're doing incubators, they're trying, there's a lot of innovation out there that we are capturing. Our service from Main Street this year is retail, and we have 7 retailers signed up to get an hour with this national retail person to help them with their businesses. That's free to them, and that's a direct result of being in Main Street. The training I get is invaluable for Main Street. But again, can't convince Mike of that, but I hope that you guys, I mean.
Here's the point, though, we used to get training as a DDA member and as a business owner, as a property owner, we used to get that kind of
I
stuff.
can't get DDA members to
Main
come
Street
to
doesn't do that anymore.
I
Main
can't
Street
get
doesn't
to
give
do
us that.
anything. DDA members don't come to things, they don't, you know.
You're right, there's a disconnect there, isn't there?
Yeah. There is.
Yeah, shame on
So the
board.
disconnect is shame on the board, okay.
Okay, that's really not the direction I wanted this to go, but, you know,
Well,
in terms of.
Just to Tim's point, when's the last time Blissfield Manufacturing ran 3 shifts or employed 100 people?
Economic development is not
He's
bringing
so-
people in to get hugs and hang out and have a beer and go home.
I'm
That's
I'm asking a question, when's the last time that happened?
I think it was 8 years ago.
That they were still running production, when's the last time they were
Total
running 3 shifts there?
When's the last time they employed 100 people?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's happening in all small towns, and what Brassworks, how many people did Brassworks employ at its height? 6?
Yeah, not very many,
No,
but
No,
if
so-
this
but
goes
you're
through,
talking hundreds of people being employed. It's not happening. It's not happening here. It's not happening in Detroit either. It's just not happening anywhere. All right, GM just laid off 1,000 people.
Where the
Right.
businesses with 5 or 6 employees coming in here.
Well,
pardon me, Mike?
that's fantastic,
But
but
it just has to, where the businesses with 5 or 6
you have
employees.
other
There's
communities,
no
Right.
you have
economic
other
development.
communities that are ready to build on site.
There's no economic
We don't
development.
have
and
that. How
then-
how many open lots do we have in our commercial zone? How many open lots do we have in our commercial?
None,
None.
none, do we, Danielle? I don't think there's any,
We have no open lots in our commercial
No.
zone, so it's just pre-existing
Phil.
buildings,
Phil. We
right?
have H&H, we have some good industry here, but we have
We do.
these albatrosses
Yes,
that we're trying to, and Blissfield Manufacturing, the roof is kind of sketchy and the ceiling is low, so a lot of these new manufacturing places, they need a higher ceiling, and that is really what's knocked us out. Danielle and I we probably get once a week an inquiry about a manufacturer wanting to come in, but it doesn't fit the bill. This situation that we're having Wednesday does. I mean, Danielle and I met with the people that bought the plant, I can't think of it, the ethanol plant. That took over a year.
That's the other thing I was gonna add too, is we're not even talking about the thing that I'm gonna call them failures, they're not failures, but you know how many times Laura and I, or both of us, have went and met with somebody at the Hathaway House looking interested in that? Off the top of my head, I can think of 7 people who didn't end up purchasing it, but it's still economic development. It was still us meeting with people and sharing what our zoning is, sharing our resources, bringing in MEDC, bringing in Main Street to connect them to hopefully make that feasible for them. So there's a lot of behind the scenes and it's very slow, but it is a whole picture thing, like having planters on our Main Street adds to economic development. We look appealing, we look inviting, we don't have trash all over. Having those conversations with people is part of economic development, being placemaking. And I'll be the first to say, I've said it to the DDA and Laura, I think we have too many events. I think events are important. I think we need some of them. We need to be a space and a place where people want to come, where they want to shop, where they want to do things, because if not, they're not going to thrive, they're not going to survive, and they're not gonna wanna be here. So economic development, it's a very, and Laura said, I think multiple people have said it tonight, but it's a very hard thing to quantify, but it doesn't mean nothing is happening, it's just very slow. It's not just gonna happen overnight.
Well, for the other part, I know it's not technically economic development, but we have a lot of people that want to move here. That like Blissfield, that love Blissfield. They come here to Blissfield because they like the community and they like the atmosphere and that is a community. And so when we don't have the vacant homes and things of that nature, people are upkeeping their homes, they take pride. That adds to our tax base. And that's part of our economic portion. No, it's not a business, but boy, you know, I think that is something else that comes from our DDA Main Street program. Look at the buildings like the tax grants and things like that, like, you know, all that stuff. I'm not ready to do that.
all right, any other discussion on employee wages? So this is gonna go to what, budget at some point?
So the budget is scheduled for the first meeting in September. I know you guys don't take official action here, but right now I've got it built in 5%. Unless I have direction otherwise, or,
Well, as of right now, DDA has approved the exemption minimum.
Correct.
35% for everybody except for the DDA manager position of 33.6%.
You have that built into the budget, Danielle?
yes. The 5% or both, I have both.
Both 5%
Yes.
across the board, and then what is it for the DDA?
So her base wage would go to $58,656, and that is the minimum required by the labor law that is.
Here's my struggle with that, as a guy on the design committee and an advocator of, like, art, you say bricks and mortar. We literally have no funding mechanism to do any of those inviting physical attributes that quote entice people to live here, to want to come here. Makes it a very, very big challenge, a struggle to do this sort of improvements. Again, my philosophy is, it's not up to me to hand the business owners money or do whatever for them. It's up to us to bring people in to help train those business owners, but also to make the town more viable and more enticing for people to want to come here and live here and hopefully support the business. It's not up to us to cater to these specific businesses. We're an element of helping them. It's not up to us to make them thrive or survive.
And
It's up to us to make them thrive. It's not up to us to make them survive.
And to the credit of the DDA, they recognize that and they started to shift the focus, right? Like we had that workshop where we eliminated. the
We
gym
eliminated
focus.
But
everything takes time.
I'd love to know what this is, if they're getting the bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean, ask Coca-Cola how much they spend on advertising, and how much they get in return. They won't be able to tell you. But they sponsor the Super Bowl, they sponsor the Olympics, they're everywhere, they're on every single billboard. Budweiser's the same, Nike, Adidas, you have to advertise. This is what it is. This is an advertising budget. So do you want to spend $60,000 on advertising or $40,000 on advertising? I'll tell you what, the $60,000, you get everything we have and more going forward. You cut it to $40,000, forget it. Might as well cut it to zero and can the whole program. This is what it is. This is advertising, marketing. You're never gonna get the full impact. You're never gonna understand that. You either believe in advertising, marketing, or you don't. Every major corporation believes in it for some odd reason, right? Why is it a small town USA does not?
But Mike, to
Why
your,
does Red Bull and Monster and everybody else? Yeah, look at, they want to advertise so bad, they're paying college kids now. Paying college kids, NIL money, where do you think that money's coming from? Big corporations. Right? They have money to spend. If you don't spend money, you're not gonna make money. Right? We're gonna die as a village if we don't continue to market. And have somebody in this point position.
but also Mike, to your thing that you don't have money to spend, you have the biggest budget in terms of design. 25,000 is allocated to you. You did all new Christmas wraps last year. You do spend money. You bought the planters, we do allocate money. To say that you don't is really disingenuous.
I don't believe that.
And we just got-
Everything that we have, we cut out every year. We don't go through these projects. We allocate.
That money's there. That's,
No, it's not, it's rolled
We're gonna-
over,
we're
it's
gonna
rolled
be
over
doing
into what,
goals.
it's rolled over into. Into a surplus fund, we've discussed that, because we destroyed that surplus over COVID. All that
well,
money
that's
falls over to
correct,
next
and we're
year.
trying to build it back up. That's correct.
Well, we just freed up 3.4 mils. Right? I mean, the reality is,
But
there's,
that's not DDA money.
no, but there should be money now for planning.
That's one thing if we're done talking about wages, that's one thing we'll talk about it, with the Ellis Park, we budgeted in like 19, 20, 21, where Park could quote, spend a little extra to maintain that. And I think taking that up seems to impact the element of cleanliness and upkeep in that park, at least the area.
You just threw a curveball at, okay, you lost me. Like a separate fund within
It's
general
in,
or?
yeah, it's under Ellis Park, it's technically part of O'Hara Park. In the DPW, which we charge them everything, much like DDA, we charge them a little bit extra, they have them maintain that park a little bit.
We've just been billing it all under Ellis Park because it had that one line item that didn't, like, we couldn't bill out wages or anything like that. So we just
So
have
you're
been,
still allocated it in Ellis Park.
correct, they still are doing maintenance and working there, it's just all coming out of Ellis Park. Sorry,
Especially if you're spending
you
it.
transitioned too fast for me. But yeah, it is, we are taking care of it, we did the planters, they actually did some work on the clock here. I don't know, maybe 6-7 weeks ago, I think it was. I don't know, it might have been less time than that, but we
Well,
are,
with all the new bushes.
Yes, and Parks and Rec, Kelsey's actually leading, on the Parks and Rec committee we're gonna do a spring and a fall work day, and those planters, we're gonna blow them out and weed them to help DPW maintain them, and that'll be volunteer based. And she's got some other really good projects as well. So we are working on that. It's part of.
It looks
Still
fabulous.
included with the
It's
budget.
really good.
All right, so input on DDA wages for the budget. Am I hearing? Them? Or am I hearing?
I'm saying that. Get the DDA position for the state mandates the law,
Yeah.
that's where it needs to go.
Yeah, the exempt minimum.
I think that you've got to be clear on that because that becomes a crutch. I want the public to know that there are other options for that. That is a requirement for a full-time position unless we pay overtime. There's also other options to not pay overtime, or there's also options to pay hourly.
If we decided to pay overtime, are we then gonna come back and nitpick every one of her time sheets and wonder where she spent her time at?
But
That
because
should
we
be the
certainly
job
don't-
of the DDA board to
But
do
it
that.
would
much
be
like
more
the
cost
commission.
effective not to do that, and that's what.
I'm not
The
saying
DDA
we should,
positions are free, that doesn't cost them anything. The DDA board,
I don't know what you just said that.
the DDA board would be the oversight, the overseers of that, and they're paid nothing. So. It would cost anything.
but ultimately it comes back to us to make a decision as to whether,
I would love just for the public to know that we're looking at a 40% increase on a DDA position over 2 years and see what people think. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, understand the reasons why. So for budget purposes, are we gonna, let's build it out then with the exempt minimum?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it'll come before you guys for approval as well. I mean, I can change it. We can go back to the DDA board and ask, but that is the recommended budget they have. That is what's built into the budget now. The other thing I would say is that if it's a conversation that the DDA would like to have, the budget can be adopted. We can spend less than that as well, but the DDA board with Eddie Laura are going to have to take a hard look at that if they change or do
I
something
specifically
else.
asked that question about the DDA, that I asked if that included what kind of was an increase. And I was never told, we were never told crystal clear that it was bumping it up to that 1250 change, never said.
I don't agree with that. It was.
It was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I was.
And we specifically said that the option,
We said
we
that.
said the options were that it was more cost effective to bump that up than to pay the overtime. Or that we would have to limit to the 40 hours. And I even stated the exact amount because I remember looking it up. Because I said it's 58 and some change and then pulled that law up.
So our next DDA meeting is September 11th. When's our?
September 12th, I think. I have to
September
look,
12th?
whatever that Wednesday is.
I have 11.
Okay.
When's our budget approval?
It's scheduled for September 9th. But that's what I'm saying, budget is scheduled for September 9th. That doesn't mean you can't come in under budget, so that would be, if DDA makes no changes, they're good. If they decide to change your hours, then they've got some time to look at that, but. Again, we're going with their recommended budget at the base right now.
did the DDA board vote on that recommended?
Yes.
Yes, they voted on the entire budget.
Was it unanimous?
It was not unanimous, but it did pass. There was one no vote.
I just want to say I'm for the 5% for the DDA director and no overtime.
Wait. Say it again?
My feeling is to a 5% for the DDA director and no overtime.
And the state law is what it's called.
No,
No.
no, he's saying 40 hours, limited
40
to 40 hours.
You're saying before, I'm so sorry, thank you, 40 hours. And
5%.
And no overtime at all.
All right, budget discussions.
I think you just had them.
It's listed here, that's why I want to make sure. that
I
it's
put
clear.
that on there because you guys had asked to talk about the DDA budget, and then you guys kind of went right into it, so.
Well, we went employee wages.
Yeah,
Correct, but at the
So-
last meeting, you guys asked specifically to talk about the DDA budget. I just
Yes.
put
So
overall
then
budget.
we need to cycle back to employee wages then as a whole, not, and no longer DDA. Wage discussion, wages for the rest of the village employees.
Yes, because if you're wanting to change the 5% that's in the budget, I need to
There you go.
scramble to do that to get it to you guys before the.
What do you have to change, because you had 5% in there?
If you wanna go.
Yeah,
If
do you wanna,
if
do you wanna?
we went, if we did not go with the 5%, then the change would happen. To everybody except Laura.
Yes.
Or I would leave it and we'd come in under budget, but I was told not to pad the budget, so. I just need direction.
Does anything other than 5%, does anybody have a proposal other than 5%?
I'm for 5% across the board.
I am not with 5% across.
What do you propose?
I am, got my little comments here. Value certainly and appreciate all of the, work that all of the, Village of Blissfield employees do. I would suggest a full-time employee receive a 3.5% increase. That is above the 3% average, approximately that they have received for the, 11 years-ish, if you will. They also will continue to enjoy their current compensation package at no cost to them. That is a big benefit. They pay no cost. And that is something that most Americans do not have the luxury to do. I think that's a beautiful thing that we can continue to do that. I know that each year that I've been on the budget, that has been something we've been very proud to continue, is not having to have the employees pay into their costs for their health insurance, as well as their dental. And in the last 2 years, I believe I talked with Danielle today, the vision benefit came on. So I think that has been obviously a perk for our employees. They've received no reductions in the compensation with, I mean, it's not going like from a plan A to a plan B or whatever it is. It continues to be the same coverage. And I think that is something that we should be very proud of, that the employees are not having to pay in, and they've gotten vision in the last 2 years, and everything stays status quo. Nothing has changed. In addition, the full-time employees, with the exception of the office staff, they do receive clothing. And I think that is a perk. It might not be a big walking perk, but it is a perk. And the chief of police would continue to have access to the village provided vehicle that includes insurance and fuel, because that is something that doesn't currently happen. I think that with those items that I just addressed, that's the reason I'm suggesting the 3.5 increase versus the 5%, as well as the wage study that did increase last year for a variety of our employees, with a 4% increase, and some employees receiving a little more than that, well, more than that. Depending on that position, to get them into that medium range, so that we could have that viable employee staff relationship, as well as keeping our employees here in the village of Blissfield, retaining our staff, which happened to be our goal number 2. That's our goal concept. So that is my comment. And my rationale for that.
Thank you.
0.5%.
but you're still willing to give 40%, or 33.6% to the,
I am going with that. Yes, sir, I am,
I
because
just wanna
that,
make that clear.
because that is a state. I don't know what the way verbiage is, Danielle, what do I call that? So I say it correctly.
Mandate.
State mandate, thank you. Because of the state mandate to keep these as they are status quo, yes, sir, I am. Just like I was proud to go ahead and give our employees the raises they received last year, so that our employees could go ahead in the central office here, be held in regard with the salary study folks that we did. Yes, I was proud of that as well last year. That brought us up into the 2024 range. And I do not deny that, or would I go back on that?
I think it needs to be clear too, we talked about it. It's a state mandate if the director works over 4 hours. Correct?
Correct.
I think that needs to be clear.
If they remain, if she can work overtime without, if she remains an exempt employee.
All right, I got 5 and I got 3.5.
I
I'll take any of
I
that.
struggle with the 5 as well, but I'm not sure where I fall at between the 3.5. Only because, as Gwen mentioned, I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but as Gwen mentioned, and I think all of us up here can say this, that we did last year take a hard look at the numbers that were wages and salaries that were given to our employees, and we tried to keep that as manageable as we could, and yet allow them and give them what we felt was deserved. And I don't know. I struggle with the 5%.
So you guys specifically gave me a goal in my evaluation that says, continue to work to build up morale among staff and departments internally. Last year was a rough year with wage studies, changes, personnel policies and procedure updates, police department unionizing, etc. Communicating, listening to, and offering feedback to our department heads and staff will help improve this. So you guys set a goal for me to improve morale. But then we're not going to approve a budgeted increase for our employees, which is going to not improve morale at all, is going to hurt morale. And I would like to know if that's what you approve, that's fine. I will move forward with it, I will support it. But then I would like some direction, how it is that you would like me to accomplish the goal that you all set for me in improving morale.
Why is a 3.5 not an acceptable percentage when we can go back to our history and we can see the average as well as the continued compensation for the health, vision, and dental?
I'll tell you why, because we
No,
have.
stop. I want you to answer. I want her to answer.
Because the 5% is budgeted already, so we can afford to do it this year. We do not know what the future will hold. We've talked about retaining good employees. Everywhere is looking at 5+% increases because the cost of living over the last couple of years in inflation. So in order to be competitive and to keep our employees wanting to be here, and that's a part of it. And I'm not saying it's all of it, because I would take a pay cut.
What's that? You said everywhere is looking at 5%.
I'm not saying every single person, other communities.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanna know, like, you do speak with other communities, so can you?
And MML just published their wage study, which I pulled, and Michigan Municipal League. They do an annual.
I don't wanna
wage study.
gloss over everyone, I want you to actually drill down so that everyone can hear that, because I went
So
through on the
I
5%.
looked at the full, it's everybody in the state of Michigan that takes the time to complete that report, gets it for free, and across the board, communities are looking at 5% increases because they're having trouble with retention of employees, with recruitment. So that's why I recommended it. And again, I talked about it earlier, we can afford that this year. Next year, maybe we can't, maybe next year is only a 2%, but at least we're not falling farther and farther behind. And then 3 years from now, trying to play catch up, which we did last year. We had to try to play catch up. And you see the morale issues and the fiasco that caused. I don't want to get us in that position. I know budgeting, it's hard for me to project, or anybody in this role, what we're gonna look like in 5 years. But I can tell you what we're gonna look like next year and a little bit the following year, and that's why I'm recommending this. And that, again, goes back to why I think it's gonna hurt morale, because what the employees are going to see and hear is, we can afford to do this year, but we're not going to. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Gwen, but that's our perspective, that's our feelings. When we
And how I
look at it.
is, from my perspective, I am lucky if I get a 3% increase. I'll probably get a 2 this year, and a 2 next year, and a 2 the following year. And that is probably wrong of me to put my own personal take on it, but Well, hang on just a second, that's how I feel though. I'm not keeping up with inflation. I can't speak for anybody else out here with their, are you gonna go up 5% in your wages this next year? I'm not trying to be smart, I'm just saying very clearly. I don't have that luxury either, and it's not that I disagree with the staff morale. I know how I feel with getting a whopping 2%. I know how I feel. And I can understand that. I'm simply going by the average, seriously. And by all of the compensations, when you look at MML, what was their insurance compared, I mean, they got the 5% wage increase as well as they were not, employees were not having to pay.
They do include benefits
They were-
in that salaries, correct.
That's what I wanted to know.
When we did our salary study
Yes,
and
yeah.
when I get the wages, we do have very good benefits. And there are very few communities that continue to pay 100%. So you are correct. I do agree with you
And
that our
that,
benefits.
but that benefit can also be, okay, not trying to be smart. I'm just saying from a number value as well. Okay, so if we go ahead and the employees have to pay the 1,000, let's just say $500 a month. Well, what's 5 times 12? 6. So that's $6,000. They're not having to pay that $6,000. That's my point.
How much did, health insurance, dental, vision go up this year?
She's got that on that.
I don't know what it will go up this year. We don't renew until it's January 1 is our effective date. I should have that information in October. I budgeted 20%. And insurance right now is across the board. Communities have had 12%, one community had 50%. Most communities have been around 18-19%. And then I did include it in that email that I sent you guys for the last couple of years, so.
How do you read it, Danielle? I'm not quite sure I understand.
So medical, health insurance was a 7.9% increase from 22 to 23. The year before it was 13.2.
Right.
Dental from 21 to 22 was 9%. Last year it was actually a decrease. We changed
So that
dental companies and we saved 4% and provided the same benefits.
Gotcha.
Vision, we added in 2022, we locked that rate in for 5 years, so we've had no increase to vision.
Okay.
And then our long-term, short-term disability and life insurance. Last year, we had no increase. Last year, we were looking at potentially having an increase in our Franklin Benefits, who helps manage our benefits for us, was able to reach out to Kansas City Life and get them to honor the same rate with no increase. So that was no increase. And then our pension fluctuates year to year based on what the percent of being funded, of our pension being fully funded, because our goal is to be 100% funded, and we're at currently 88%.
What is it, 88%? All of our employees, 80%?
Correct. Total pension liability, we're.
And again, that is something that so many businesses, new teachers starting out get no pension. Dippity do that, nothing.
We don't have teachers,
I know, I'm just making the comment, how a pension is a valuable part of the program.
absolutely.
That's the part I'm trying to.
Well, that's something I think we need to get away from any fires, and that's something we need to investigate as a council.
And no, I'm not saying, I'm not saying let me clarify, I am not saying to get rid of the pension. I am simply stating that's still another benefit.
Right.
That's the point.
But here's my point, that's, before you cut me off, I don't want to hear it, but here's the thing.
No, I want to hear
People,
it.
people, our employees are watching this, obviously, okay?
I would hope they
They're
would.
crazy, but they watch, they sit through this boring stuff and watch it, because they haven't taken it. And they have a stake in it, and for us to say, we go through the budget, and then we have a little bit of a, I don't wanna call it a surplus, but again, we have a choice where we can nitpick and kind of willy down. Different projects that we're gonna accomplish, or investments, things like that, we had the opportunity to do that. Our employees are an investment, and if we had some sort of funding mechanism to where we could pick and choose some of these projects. For us to say, oh, we're gonna do this, but we're not gonna take our employees, I think we could kick them, you know, what's them. And I don't think that that's okay.
And I think we are taking care of our employees. I think I do with with the benefit, with that kind of.
I agree, yeah, and I've said that for years,
And
we pride ourselves on
and you and I have been on the
keeping
board for a number of
yes,
years, we have
absolutely.
said the
Right,
same
exactly.
statement. We have been very lucky with the quality of our employees, absolutely. And do they deserve everything they get?
We're
Absolutely.
looking at $30,000. We're looking at $30,000 over this year. Again, 25 will go to economic development right now, right? From the general fund. So go 5 across the board, make it fair. You're only five short then. Right? Again, the employees see this stuff. The employees know the budget. They look through it. They know where we're spending. So to talk about, much like Danielle alluded to, the morale issue, trust me, the morale is ugly. And
Well, I
there's
don't
a.
know, well, you talked about the morale.
Talk a
ugly,
lot. I get
Oh,
out and I talk to our staff.
And I don't,
I'm saying, you would know about the morale issues if you did.
and I don't hear what, I'm not
I'm
gonna.
just gonna go at this as a business standpoint. I think the business of the village can afford it. If they don't know what they can afford next year, that'll have to be determined. I don't think we're gonna be able to continue offering 100% health coverage.
You've been saying that for 5 years.
Yeah, and it's coming to, it's gonna have to be examined at some point. But I was pretty upset last year when not everyone was accepting the higher wages, so I'm gonna sort of force it upon them this year to take the 5%. I'd love to be able to give them more. Making sure that they're paid a market wage so that they aren't going to competing municipalities.
Danielle made a good point.
And staying with us, and I thought the wage study did that last year, it wasn't presented well to everyone. But I think we got out of it what we needed to get out of it, so I'm with the 5%. It just, I know it's rich. You know, you can't always offer 5%, we can this year, and so I think we offer it to them. It does impact us going forward, but if we can't, if we keep up with inflation for the next few years, it should keep them in the market and or above market valuation, so I'm with the 5% this one. The employees are our biggest asset, like, let's get on this right.
You know, we can't do anything.
Oh, no,
without-
I will never take that away. Absolutely not. So I'm just, again,
And I understand the points you're making, Gwen, and I know you're trying to safeguard funds. And it is one of our jobs, but to Danielle's point,
no, she makes a great point.
yeah.
I understand.
I just,
I didn't think of it that way, of looking at, we don't go with that kind of a percent, I didn't think of it this way, so hold on. I didn't think of it as the way, is if we don't increase, it will put us further behind, and then we'll eventually get to where we were with the salary study. I did not think of it in that way. I thought that the 3.5 would still keep us within the market, would still keep us in the median of the patch. But you're saying that that will not.
It will for this year, but where that gets challenging is,
What will
let's
next year
say.
look like?
For next year's inflation is 3%, but we can only afford 1%. Now we're 2% behind. Year 3, inflation is 4%, we can only afford 3%. Now we're 3% behind. So we have an opportunity this year to say, okay, we can afford to do 5%, knowing inflation right now is, they say, projected at 3.2%. We're ahead a little bit. So if next year's inflation is 3%, but we can only afford to do 2%, I'm still ahead of percent. Our employees are still doing good. I'm not getting to year 5 where I'm 10% behind.
And that's where we had our problems when we did the water sector. We didn't have that continual
yes.
appropriate increase. And so learn from our mistakes. I'm talking to myself. It does. I need to hear that. I need to hear that.
Having this discussion, one final statement. The pension is for the future. The 5% is for now. And we're at the grocery store. Thank you.
Yes. Agreed.
So consensus 5. So here, right? Anyone want more? Just kidding.
I just want to set the record straight for any employees that are listening. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. not a slap in the face. I'm simply looking at the numbers. Danielle makes a good point. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, anything else before we go? Thank you for the input and live discussion. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.